You're now watching the Danny Mac Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Welcome into the Danny Mac Podcast. It's Championship Sunday, the post-game edition, not the pod I was hoping to do today, because if you listened last week, you know I was hoping to find my Barry Sanders jersey somewhere in a box in a garage. It'll have to wait until next year. The Lions go down to the 49ers, and dramatically too, because they kicked San Francisco's ass in the first half and squandered the lead. And they got a great guest to go through the wreckage with me today. Former Lions quarterback Scott Mitchell, good old number 19, kind enough to give us some time. Are you blue this morning? And I don't mean Honolulu blue. Are you blue by the outcome? I know you were probably rooting very hard for your former team, Scott.
Yeah, I was really disappointed. I've been in Detroit. I've played there. I've lived there. I know the fans and how passionate they are about the team. And it's been a long time. And they're one of the few teams that actually hasn't been to the Super Bowl. So, yeah, I was really pulling for them. Big fan of Jared Goff. You know, he's been through a lot of things, and really would have loved to have seen him kind of answer the critics. And I'm also a big fan of Dan Campbell. It's not easy to do what he's done in Detroit. I mean, the history has proven that it's hard, and he's really changed the culture. I think even changed the culture of the fan base to some extent. But yeah, I was really disappointed.
When you talk about the criticism of Goff, and there's going to be some anytime a quarterback's team doesn't win. He didn't throw an interception. That's the nature of the job. What was it about the criticism of your career that led you to feeling so bitter? I haven't seen Bye Bye Barry yet. I was going to watch it the night before the Lions' first Super Bowl, Scott, but I've been debriefed on what was said, and you feel like you have taken the shoulder of the blame for the Lions not winning a Super Bowl. From where does that criticism come that upsets you so much? Fans, media, teammates?
I mean, I understand having criticism and all that stuff, and and to say I'm not bitter at all. That I'm disappointed that during my time we didn't get more time. It's hard to win a Super Bowl in the NFL, and we had some really good teams, and I think had we been given more time to keep that team together, I think we ultimately would have gotten there. I really do. I really believe that. I played in the NFL for 12 years. I played with a lot of great players on some really good teams with a lot of talent, and there weren't teams that were any more talented than the Lions teams that I was on. And so it's just it's frustrating and disappointing that we didn't have more time together. The criticism, it is what it is. But I will tell you, getting booed at home games every single week is not a pleasant experience. I don't care who you were. And that's what I dealt with all the time. In fact, Jared Goff even mentioned it. He said, it settled me when the fans were actually cheering for me and actually calling out my name. And I thought, what a concept. Your home fans actually get behind you. And I really never had that when I was in Detroit. And I think a lot of it is people felt, well, all we need to get to a Super Bowl is a quarterback. And I was one of the first free agents ever in the NFL and signed at the time what was a huge deal. And now it's, pocket change. But so the expectation was certainly very high, and the frustration level with Lions fans was even high back then. So they expected me to come in and we were going to go right to the Super Bowl and win it in year one. And it takes more than just one player. And so my my criticism or my frustration or disappointment with the Barry Sanders bye-bye thing is not really with Barry, but it's like everyone's, it was like if Barry had better players around him, the team would have won a Super Bowl. And that just wasn't the case. There were a lot of really good players around Barry. Wayne Fontes, our former coach, he's heard saying something in the biography, I guess is what it's called. He said, "Man, we were just a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl," and I was offended by that because I had a lot of really good years, and what people don't understand is Barry was a unique player, and it was hard. It was hard to you had to run Barry the right way because He wasn't a guy that was going to catch passes. He wasn't a guy that was going to block. He wasn't a guy that was going to run between the tackles. You're going to get a lot of situations where you were behind the chains. You were second and long. You were third and long because he was a home run hitter, and he had a lot of runs that went for no yards, negative yards, and if you ran him the wrong way, you could be really inconsistent as an offense. And so, uh, Barry Sanders came with challenges, and when we figured out how to do it right, we were explosive, but that wasn't always the case.
Lomas Brown has been a regular on my shows over the years, the left tackle, 19 years in the league, 12 with the Lions. Lomas was a terrific pass protector, but, I mean, what I remember about your team, Scott, is they weren't going to win many street fights. I mean, yeah, Barry was electric, but you had to throw the shit out of the ball. That wasn't an offensive line that was going to go in cold weather and maul people. And Barry's playoff record proves that. So for Wayne Fonts to say that, I don't blame you for being pissed off.
Yeah, you talk about the line being kind of maulers. It's frustrating as an offensive lineman. Every play has a certain step to it for the lineman. You know how to block on a run play. There's a certain steps you take as a quarterback and as running back, and all of that went out the window with Barry. I mean, it was Barry basically hand the ball off to Barry, and he was going to run wherever he ran. So a lineman might think he's blocking his guy, and the next thing he knows, he's not, and that can get really frustrating. I mean, it's exciting. Look, Barry was I saw some of the greatest runs I've ever seen in the NFL, but we were not a power football team. Now, when they fired Wayne and brought Bobby Ross in, he was a power coach with a finesse offense, and it was like oil and water. He put a fullback in the backfield. He was trying to make Barry Sanders run between the tackles, and that's not how we were built, and not I mean, it really wasn't. And so, yeah, it was kind of tough for everyone because maybe the style we had didn't necessarily fit the personnel all the time.
Is that fullback Corey Schlesinger, or am I a fullback early?
No, Corey kind of came in. Tommy Verdell.
Tommy,
Yeah, who's a great guy.
Tommy,
I love Tommy, but and Corey as well. I mean, both of them are super guys. But yeah, they kind of came in, and we did have more. Right before I got there, Detroit was the run and shoot offense. So and so we had a lot of holdover from that even when I got there. We were really good when we spread teams out and just took what they gave us. I had great wide receivers: Herman Moore, Brett Perriman, Johnny Morton. Dave Sloan was a Pro Bowl tight end, and then you have Barry Sanders. And so when they had fewer guys in the box, we ran the ball with Barry Sanders, and he rushed for 1,500 yards. When they brought those guys down into the box, I threw it to two wide receivers who had over 1,000 yards receiving and 100 catches both. Johnny Morton, had 75 receptions. That's when we were really good, and we just didn't stay with that system very long. I mean, and that was my frustration. It's like if we good coaches. They talk about Ben Johnson and Jared Goff. He's like figures out what they can do best and works with that. I mean, I was drafted by Don Shula. He did the same thing. And you just have some coaches, and Bobby Ross was kind of a stubborn man. And he was like, you're going to do it my way. I don't care what kind of talent you have. Figure it out and fit into my system.
Yeah. A lot of guys make that mistake. Mistakes made by the Lions yesterday. I'm not a big fan of metrics in football. I think it deserves to be more in baseball, where there are fewer elements that play into outcomes. You got 22 guys in a football game. If 60% of the time you make it in 4th and 2, that's great. The 40% of the time it cuts your dick off, I don't want to risk that. And Dan Campbell was 1 for 3 on 4th down yesterday. He's going to take a ton of heat. He already has. But there's a should have been interception by Kendall Vildor. There's a rare fumble from guys who usually hang on to it, a bad exchange between Goff and Gibbs. Teams win and teams lose. Yet quarterbacks and head coaches are the ones who almost invariably take the biggest amount of crap for it. How would you distribute the blame game for what happened last night in San Francisco?
Well, Dan Campbell he goes, look, this is who I am, right? I'm going to go for it. Everyone knows he's going to go for it. His team knows he's going to go for it. His coaches know. Everyone knows, and it doesn't matter the bigness of the game, right? I'm sitting there going, kick the field goal, kick this field goal, right? So then the touchdown they score at the end of the game puts them ahead, and I've always been of the understanding that points are valuable. And I think, and I thought about this last night a little bit this morning. I think there's a sense of disrespect with just, oh shoot, we're just going to go for it on fourth down, and the disrespect is for the other team. One of the things I learned from day one when I got in the NFL, everybody's good. Everybody's good. Like, you're not playing chump change over there. Going for it on fourth down is a big gamble. And I think the points are so much more of a reward than the risk you get for going for it. Dan Campbell is okay. He's a risk taker. He's a guy that's going to go for it. Well, maybe the gamble for Dan Campbell in that situation is not to go for it. Maybe his gamble is to go against those situations. I felt like the feeling of the game, the momentum of everything would have been better for him to put points on the board, because it's another possession that team has to go down the field and actually score a touchdown. The first time that they didn't go for it, that's when everything changed. The whole momentum of that entire game changed. And I thought Jared Goff, there was no blame for Jared. I thought Jared Goff played phenomenal. I thought he had a great game, even in those fourth down situations. But I understand who Dan Campbell is. I like him. I've liked him from day one. But that might have been a situation where I would have kind of held back the reins and kicked the field goal.
Yeah. What do you target in the offseason if you're the Lions? Another pass rusher?
Yeah, and maybe I know they like a lot of the young guys they have at the wide receiver position. Maybe another wide receiver, offensive line, probably the best in the NFL. I mean, that's a big reason why. Well, I would love that offensive line. I'll just tell you right now. Yeah, probably. Maybe another corner. Another rusher, another pass rusher. It maybe helps Aiden Hutchinson, to have another guy on the other side or someone on the inside. This is a young team, though, and it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back from this year, because that's a brutal loss. It's a brutal loss because they did everything, or at least enough, to win that football game, and even with the funny bounces and all the things that went on, and so. How resilient is Dan Campbell and this Lions team, and can they bounce back from this next year?
Scott, I've enjoyed this. I want to wrap it up by sharing a story with you about how you, in a very complimentary manner, became a part of Chicago sports radio lore in a soundbite and a colloquialism for years. The 95 season, your best as a pro, 4,300 yards, 32 tutties, and only 12 picks. You guys were kicking the Bears' ass on a Monday night at the Silverdome, and Wayne Larrivee, now the Packers announcer, was the Bears radio guy, and he'd get edgy when the Bears weren't playing well. And when they weren't getting pass pressure on you, he sets the formation, Johnny Mitchell, motion near side, Mitchell barking out signals, Mitchell back to pass, and why not? From that day forward, anytime the Bears pass rush failed, on Monday, callers and hosts and columnists would be saying, Mitchell back to pass, and why not? Because you set up shop all day against that Bears defense. And it, for a long time, was a Chicago colloquialism. I don't know if a T-shirt was ever made, but you lived in infamy from a Bears fan standpoint, but maybe Lions fans should have known how we felt about you here. Maybe they wouldn't have booed your ass.
I love that. And, it's funny when you bring that up. One of the there's two memories of that game. One was Herman Moore, and I threw a 5-yard hitch to Herman Moore, and it was open. So I'm like, why not do it again? So the next play, I throw another 5-yard hitch to Herman Moore, and I'm like, if it's working, don't change it. So I threw another one, and so three hitch routes in a row, and he scores a 78-yard touchdown. And what we really learned from that is we make this way too complicated. And that was what it's like. Put people in the right position and give them the ball. Get the ball in your playmakers' hands. And really, that's what I think San Francisco did and has done all year long. Better than anyone. I think the same thing you could say with Kansas City. But the other thing about that game is they ran this really weird defense. And I couldn't figure it out at first. And it's called an inverted two deep. And basically the safety, who's normally a deep half, comes down and he replaces positions with the cornerback. And it's a really weird look. And it's almost like you get the best run support, but you also get the best pass. But they left Herman Moore alone on the sideline when they did it, and they didn't figure out how to cover him. But those are just two memories that have stuck in my head for all these years.
So much more to do on Championship Sunday, so little time. Come back soon to the Danny Mac podcast. I plan to be dropping more than the usual 2 or 3 pods this week because Championship Sunday deserves it. I want to thank Sam Michael, the executive producer of the show, Randy Merkin, who gets all of the guests for us, our guy Alex Pastor, who handles social media, Troy Mocker in research and development, and Baby Capone is Adam Delavitt. Thanks so much for listening. 10 takeaways. Where Patrick Mahomes fits in all time. You haven't heard that conversation. Tony Romo, his work, upside, downside. Is there an upside? We're going to explore all these things and why America is gnashing teeth over the audacity of a country music star globally who cheers for her boyfriend when he plays in a football game. I'm Dan McNeil, and thanks for listening to the Danny Mac podcast on the Bet Rivers Podcast Network.